Hey, folks. Welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense. I'm here alone. I'm recording because I have nothing else to do tonight, and there's some things going on. I don't know if I'm going to continue recording after this. It's still kind of up in the air. I'm still trying to find someone who can agree to the time to that would need to be put into doing the project. Um, so right now, it's not really. I don't know whether or not we're going to continue, or if we're going to restart recording. We haven't recorded in quite some time, but uh, again, I'm in North Carolina right now, and there's a lot of things going on. Apparently, today or tomorrow is going to be the day that the ban on altar rails and kneelers is uh, being enforced. I don't I don't know. It's a real shame. This is after the bishop had kicked out all the had put a stop to any parish TLM, which is just so odd because the traditional Latin Mass people are generally the most enthusiastically Catholic people, and there are some Novus Ordo parishes that really do a good job of getting people more into the worship, more into the church, more into volunteering. But even then, there you will not find a more reverent people, especially during the mass. And I think during the mass it's more. I think reverence during the mass is more important than enthusiasm outside the mass. During the mass, we are taking part in the crucifixion of Christ, and Christ is being presented to us physically, his body, blood, soul, and divinity. I haven't been to Orthodox masses or the Byzantine. There's a lot of other rites out there. I just know the Novus Ordo and the TLM. Those are kind of the two most popular. TLM only more recently. Actually, I don't know. Maybe the Orthodox is more popular, and maybe the Byzantine. Maybe they have bigger numbers than the TLM. I don't know, but most Catholics have only uh, been in the Novus Ordo, and if they've been in more than that, it's probably the TLM, especially lately. Um, and it's not something that you could really deny when you see people at the TLM mass, the way they behave throughout the whole mass, not just when they go to receive communion, but during the whole mass, the way they behave is so different. It's a shame that you wouldn't want to promote that, and that's obviously what this bishop wants to do. He doesn't want the promotion of reverence for Jesus Christ. I don't. There's no calling this stupid or ignorant. It's just evil. That's all it can be at this point. For a long time, my brother and I would talk about whether these people are just dumb or if there's really something evil on the maybe even under the surface here, something even maybe demonic. And I would say we don't have to wonder that anymore, especially for a lot of these bishops. Um, thank goodness I don't live in North Carolina. I'm just down here on work and sitting in my hotel room at like 7 o'clock at night with nothing to do. But The fact that it came up made me start thinking and made me start thinking, I wish I could talk to someone about this, but no one's here. So I'm talking to you if you're one of the few people who still listen to the podcast. Now, also, one of the things going on is the death of Renee Good. And, well, before I get to that, we've got the Don Lemon, him and his crew attacking this church. They go into the middle of a service and make a bunch of noise and protest, and they're told to leave, and they don't leave. Well, they didn't get arrested. Nothing happened to them. And now there's talk of maybe the federal government stepping in with the FACE Act. The FACE Act, I think this would be the best thing possible. I don't understand why they wouldn't do this. This is so great. The FACE Act was created originally to fight anti-abortion protesters. That's what it was created for. And if you want a really good understanding of why it is in our law system right now, I can't. Well, we have an interview with Randall Terry. It's a 3-part series. I think we split it up into 3 parts, but you can listen also to just the straight interview. And you get a pretty good idea of why the FACE Act is here. It is because of Operation Rescue, which was a movement, a civil disobedience movement against abortion, and it was very successful, and it was very popular, much more popular than they want you to know or believe, much more successful than you want them to know. In fact, I would say it formed the way we talk about abortion. It formed when we have a line drawn in the sand, and you're either on that side or that side, and you know that the people on this side are crazy lunatics, maybe even demonic, and the people on this side aren't, probably. That doesn't make them perfect. That doesn't make them great. That doesn't even make them right wing. It's just that for some reason, these people over here are very different from the people over here. That line in the sand was drawn because of Operation Rescue. And because of Operation Rescue, and because we were doing so much to disrupt the abortion industry, they came up with the FACE Act. This was to put, because protesters commonly throughout much of American history, protesters get arrested, you go downtown, you're processed, you get out without bail usually, and then often you have to come back for some kind of court hearing, but even then, really nothing happens after that. That's how protesting works in America, commonly. If it's a protest that where people maybe get a little bit wild, even violent. We went through the protests like the George Floyd riots. They got very violent, and they were burning buildings down and everything. And if anyone was arrested, it was that they were just let go again. The pro-lifers, it wasn't violence, it was civil disobedience. There's a big difference. If you watch, well, I'm not sure, I don't know where you could go to see how they behave in a rescue mission, especially during like the 90s, during Operation Rescue. You go into a building and you sit down in a place that's inconvenient so that the abortionists cannot conduct business for that day, or at least until they clear the pro-lifers out. So you go in and you sit down. Every now and then there's a guy who happens to be close to a machine or something that is used directly in the abortion procedure. And some of those people will mess it up. Um, I knew one guy who had yanked a, I don't, might have been a girl. I don't remember. Somebody had yanked the wire out of a machine. So the machine is plugged in. I don't know if it's like a suction machine and they pulled the wire out of the machine. So now they need either maintenance or a medical uh, equipment technician to come in and fix it. It has to be fixed. You can't plug it in again. Um, that was the extent of the violence. And for some reason, I'm thinking that person got like 5 years. May not have served it all, but it was that small amount of property vandalism, property destruction would put them in jail for a few years. Now, if someone burns a building down, like they did during the George Floyd riots, I don't know if that person would ever get out of jail. It did happen here and there, not very often, but there was every now and then there was some pro-lifer who just felt like I feel like I should blow this building up. And as far as I know, no people ever died during those things, and I don't think it was very often. The one in Cincinnati, uh, there was a guy found guilty of doing it. He did do it. He was arrested and he was sent to jail. I don't. He's probably out by now. I'm not sure, but from what I've been told, and I was very young when that happened. I wouldn't have been more than 12. Um, the guy who did this kind of popped up out of nowhere. Nobody knew who he was, and then suddenly he's a part of the pro-life community, going down to the abortion clinic every Saturday to protest, and then he blows up a building. It happens to be a building that Planned Parenthood wanted to tear down um, because they wanted to build a new facilities. They weren't allowed to tear it down because of certain rules with the historic society. I don't know, it had been labeled a historic building, so they weren't able to tear this building down. And then this guy comes and blows it up or burns it down, whatever he did. He went to jail for, I know it was more than 5 years, more than 10 years. Um, but those kinds of things very rarely happen during pro life protests. People go in and they sit down and they wait for the police to come and get you. I remember hearing speeches on this and pep rallies, things like that. Again, I was a kid. My mom wouldn't let me be a part of it. I was too young, and there were no other. I wasn't even a teenager yet, so I don't know if I would have been taken to the kiddie jail, or I don't know what they would have done with me. There were no other boys my age who I could link arms with and do it, and so it was like, no, we can't. If you go down to jail by yourself, we can't. We don't necessarily know how to get you out of that. So and you'll be in it alone. And anyway, I wasn't allowed. Um, but I remember all too well the prep work and what people did. And they were told, you go into the building, you sit down. The police will eventually come and they'll say, okay, you're under arrest. And they said, look, if you feel like you can't walk out to the cop car, then go boneless and just lay there and force them to carry you out, which I know a lot of people did. I think my mom said she can't, in good conscience, walk out of the building, so she would make them carry her. I think she got lucky because a lot of people who did that would the cops weren't easy about taking them out. They'd handcuff them and then pick them up by the cuffs behind their back. So, I'm imagining some bones came out of joint. It seems like they would. And I also know a case where a guy they had handcuffed him and then cuffed his feet together and then just picked him up by the feet and just dragged him out. So he's going down steps, going boom, boom, boom. Um, that kind of stuff happened all the time. It was so underreported that probably me telling you this, you probably don't even believe me. That's just how it was. Pro-lifers were not dealt with nicely. And they were the most peaceful protesters you could find as a group. I know every now and then there might be one who would do something, but and if that happened, I mean, everybody knew about it. Everybody in the country knew about it because finally they've got a violent Christian and they can tell everybody how violent we are. But thousands and thousands and thousands of people went to jail trying to shut down abortion clinics through civil disobedience, going in, sitting in a building. At most, they would sing hymns as far as noise. They wouldn't sit there and blow horns and whistles and make annoying music or make annoying anything. They would go in and sit down and sing hymns. That's civil disobedience. That's what I understand civil disobedience to be. And I would say to anyone who's going to be a part of a movement of civil disobedience, be prepared. You're going in, you're breaking the law. You're doing that on purpose. And you're probably going to face some consequences. And the pro-lifers who faced severe consequences took it. And you don't know any of their names because nobody ever reported on it. So when real quickly, the FACE Act was created to deal with those people. We were making a lot of splash. We were causing things to happen in Congress and in the country. And we were getting a big spotlight. And they didn't like that. Planned Parenthood didn't like that. And so the Clintons came up with the FACE Act. And they made it a bigger crime to go in and do these things. The FACE Act is, let's see, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act of 1994. So after the FACE Act, if you went in and took part in a rescue mission, if you went into a clinic and sat down and wouldn't leave until you were arrested, it was a bigger crime now, where you might start facing really serious time. Keep in mind, most of the pro-lifers were family people. It wasn't college kids. It wasn't college junkies. They weren't people who didn't have lives. They were family people, mothers and fathers, who had to go home and take care of their family or had to go home and go to work the next day in order to feed their families. Those are the people, those are the biggest crowd, the biggest section of the pro-life community, families. So the FACE Act was kind of like, hey, I'll go to jail overnight or even a couple days, maybe even a whole week, but this is real time. This is real prison. And families aren't able to take part in that. And so Operation Rescue all but ended. And that's what the FACE Act is for. Now, I heard a short thing on the Steven Crowder show where they were watching another guy say, well, the FACE Act is for abortion clinics and to protect women so that they're not, molested as they go into abortion clinics. And he got it. He did kind of get it right. I heard Crowder was kind of slamming him for saying such a stupid thing, but he did kind of get it right. That is what the FACE Act was created for. Was It wasn't to protect abortion. It was to punish pro-lifers. That portion of the pro-life movement, very few people talk about anymore, and it's very little understood. It's such a monumental part of the pro-life uh, community, or at least it's a part of how the community developed and who's in it and how much work they did and how much work they're still doing, and still not being talked about. But I keep losing my place here. The FACE Act was created to fight those people and to put them in jail for longer lengths of time. So the guy was kind of right. I think it would be absolutely great if people like Don Lemon, who him and his crowd invaded a worship service at a church that was very obviously a church, asked to leave and wouldn't leave and didn't get arrested. I don't get that. I mean, pro lifers would go into a building, and if they were asked to leave, they wouldn't leave, then they didn't get arrested. That was just what happened. These guys weren't even arrested, let alone arrested and let go. They just weren't arrested. And it doesn't look like they're going to be arrested unless the federal government comes after them, because in the FACE Act, it also has a section that criminalizes the force, threats, or physical obstruction or to block access to uh, places of worship among the abortion clinics. It also protects places of worship. They've used the FACE Act against us. There are still some people in jail. I think Joan Andrews was just very recently, uh, I don't know if she was pardoned or her sentence was suspended. Trump finally got her out of jail. She's been in jail longer than almost anyone. She's been in jail for like ever since I was a kid, and she would get out and go right back in for protesting abortion. So hats off to Joan Andrews. But they brought the FACE Act against her for her acts, and I think it would be so appropriate to bring the FACE Act against people on the left like Don Lemon. I think that would be so great, and I hope that they do it. Um, but I guess we'll see. Now, you know what? I almost forgot what I wanted to say about Renee, what's her name? Renee Good. It's just, again, pro-lifers went in knowing the dangers and facing the dangers and taking their lumps. It would never occur to a pro-lifer to do violence against the police. To me, I thought I never thought that police should get any kind of special protection. But it is the pro-life way not to do any violence against anyone, because the pro-lifers were always very peaceful, and you don't do violence against people. There was, kind of theoretically the argument about doing something to doctors. Doctors are going to kill people. If you killed that doctor, then they couldn't kill other people. I, I So even there were some secular pro-lifers, and usually if there was any talk about violence, that's who it came from. But They just weren't violent people. And again, the only argument that could ever be made would be violence against doctors or people who were actually committing the murder. Um, if you did violence against a mother, obviously that would kind of defeat the purpose because the mother still has the baby inside her. You do violence against her, now you've done violence against the baby as well, who is the one you're trying to protect. It certainly would never come up to do violence against the police other than perhaps resisting arrest. Um, I did know every once in a while there'd be, I remember like people like Joe Martin. I don't think he's still alive anymore, but he was a bit of he was kind of a nut job, you know, never violent, but he was one of the few people who absolutely refused to be arrested. Now, he wouldn't punch a cop, but he would fight out of his control. And when they tried to tackle him, he would crawl out. And then I remember once he crawled under our bus and linked his arms to the bumper, and they were trying to pull him out of there. It took like 10 cops to finally arrest him. I don't think any of those cops got hurt. And I don't think he ever intended to hurt any of those cops. If he could hurt them, he wouldn't have. He just wasn't going to be arrested without a real fight. So that was the extent of the violence that a cop might have to deal with. Running a cop over, just, it's not on the menu. And I think any pro lifer who would try to do that, the media would have attacked them and would have celebrated their death. Now, I don't necessarily celebrate the death of Renee Good, but um, I do think something has to be done about these violent protesters. And I don't think death is off the menu in self defense. I mean, if you've got a giant, whatever it is, 5-ton vehicle moving towards a cop, um, with the wheels moving towards that cop, you kind of get that's what happens. If you're going to get violent at a protest, expect to be violated. That's how protesting works. You don't get to go and disrupt everybody's day and then just go home and act like nothing happened. Throughout all of the pro-life protests, people who were going into the lion den, people who were going to step inside these clinics and trespass, they knew what they were in for, and they knew they might get hurt. And I imagine if any of them had tried to physically attack a doctor, a nurse, or a cop, they might expect a pretty severe, a pretty severe consequence for that, including death. And I think that these violent protesters, I don't think death should in any way be off the menu. If you're doing something that could kill a cop and you're doing it purposely, then I think they should be shot. And I think Renee Good should have been shot. It's possible that the cop didn't have to shoot her. It's possible that he would have been fine. But I still think she should have been shot. When you do something that could kill a cop, I don't think it's. I think death is what you should go in knowing that you might die. And all these people who are breaking the laws, they should know that they are going to have to pay consequences for it, especially the violent ones. And I think if I'm waiting for these people to start attacking someone and that person pull out a gun, and I don't know. I don't think these kinds of protests would be going on in a place like Ohio, where we have where we're allowed to conceal. I don't know what the laws are in Minnesota, but um, let's see. You can conceal carry in Minneapolis, but you have to have a permit. Um, you don't need a permit in Ohio. Well, I wonder. I wonder then what's going to happen here with these protesters. Uh, Somebody's going to open back fire. I mean, there's people being harassed just because people suspect them of being an ICE agent. If they were an ICE agent, I would imagine that person would be carrying. Um, so I'm waiting for that to come up. And I think these protesters, I think the ones who are doing violence ought to have violence committed against them, even death, especially if the violence they're doing could possibly cause death. I do think that these people should be made dead. I think that's a just reward, and this is coming from someone who watched the civil disobedience game played for many years and watched it grow from nothing to everything and then shrink back to nothing again because of the FACE Act. So, yes, the FACE Act should be used against Don Lemon, and physical violence should be used against these violent protesters. And I don't know, maybe we'll see that happen more and more. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening, and maybe I'll see you again soon. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Don't you do it right. Come on, baby. Come on, baby, now, baby, now. Baby